Two numbers, 5.8 and 14.6. The first one is Russia's official annual inflation rate for March. The second is the inflation people actually feel in real life. Same country, same stores, same time period, but the difference is almost 3 times. And this is not a statistical error. It's not even a lie in the direct sense. These are simply two completely different ways to measure rising prices. And they give completely different answers to the same questions. So where is the real inflation for your wallet? Why does it feel like your money disappears when you are in the grocery store? Let's break it down. Here is how this works. Every month, every country publishes inflation data. In Russia, annual inflation in March was officially 5.8%. But where does that number come from? Every day, workers collect prices in 279 cities across Russia. They track the prices of 558 different goods and services. Everything from bread to online movie subscriptions. Every product has its own importance. Bread matters more than smartphones. Food matters more than electronics. Services matter more than clothing. So when the government calculates inflation, it multiplies every price change by its weight in the economy. And in the end, they get one average number. That number, 5.8%, becomes the official inflation rate, according to the state. But now comes the interesting part. At the same time, inflation is also measured by the Central Bank of Russia. But they do it completely differently. Not through price tags, through people. Every month, they ask Russians one simple question. How much do you personally feel prices have increased over the last year? And in April 2026, the average answer was 14.6%. This is what the central bank calls observed inflation. Same country, same period, but the number is 2.5 times higher. So now we have two inflations at the same time. One in official statistics, the other in people's heads. So which one is real? Both. Let's look at one simple example. Imagine a family earning $600 a month, for example. Out of that, around $240 goes to food. That's about 40% of their entire budget. But in the official inflation basket, food only has a weight of around 30%. See the gap? For a regular family, food is much more important than it is in government statistics. Now look at what happened in 2025. Overall inflation was around 5.5%. Services became 9.3% more expensive. Gasoline almost 10%. So if you spend 40% of your income on food, while the official basket assumes only 30%, your personal inflation is automatically higher. If you drive every day, even higher. If you rent an apartment, higher again, and so on. The government calculates averages, but you are not an average person. I am not average either. Nobody is. That's why your real inflation will never perfectly match the official number. Leave a like if you didn't know this before. There is another thing people rarely talk about. The official methodology systematically understates inflation for poor people and overstates it for rich people. Sounds controversial, but it's just math. The lower someone's income is, the bigger share of their money goes to food. So when food prices rise, poor families feel it much more strongly. For wealthy people, food is a smaller part of their budget. Inflation is basically a hidden tax on the poor, and that tax barely shows up in official reports because the official number is just an average. Imagine a hospital where half the patients have a fever of 40 degrees and the other half are already dead. The average temperature would still look normal. That's basically how this works. Now the main question: why does the government even need inflation statistics that feel so disconnected from reality? Simple, because inflation affects everything. Pensions, social benefits, government salaries, minimum wage, utility tariffs, state contracts, bond yields. Every extra percent of inflation means billions in additional government spending. If official inflation is 5% instead of 14%, the state pays less money to pensioners, teachers, and people living on fixed income. That difference becomes a hidden tax, not a conspiracy, just arithmetic. And that's exactly why the methodology is is conservative. That's why the basket changed very slowly. That's why it still includes products nobody uses anymore, while missing things almost everyone spends money on today. The government isn't technically lying. Its version of reality is just different from yours. And one last thing. Next time someone tells you inflation is only 6%, don't argue. Just nod and calculate your own. You already have everything you need. Take your monthly expenses today. Compare them to the same expenses 1 year ago. Use the formula on the screen. That number, your personal inflation, is the one that should guide your financial decisions. What investments to make, what salary raise to ask for, what assets to buy. Because if you base your life on official inflation numbers, you are probably underestimating how much money you are actually losing every year. And over time, that makes people poorer, slowly, quietly, without them even noticing. And calculating your real inflation only takes 15 minutes. Write your number in the comments. I'm genuinely curious how much inflation real people are actually feeling. And if this video was useful, subscribe. See you next time, guys.